All right, so we are all set to go. I just want to say hello to everybody. Welcome to the Addicts Anonymous podcast. I'm your host, Jim R. Today is episode 32, and we're going to be interviewing Mike D. How you doing this morning, sir?
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, great. So let's just dive right into it. I know you got a story to tell, Mike. So what was up with your childhood? Did you have both parents? Was it a good childhood, a bad childhood?
Yeah, good childhood. I grew up in New York, Westchester County, just north of the city. Um, pretty normal, pretty normal childhood. My parents split up when I was like 12, I believe. And then very normal, just very, no major trauma or anything like that.
Do you remember anything that from your childhood may not have been traumatic but led to your drug abuse? Because most of the people I talk to, they have some type of drama or they have some type of stuff that did happen. And just curious if that might have been the case for you.
No, I don't think so. I think it, I go to meetings and they talk about, some people are born with it and it evolves and some people, I'm not positive about that, but for me, it really, uh, I think it evolved, but I think in general, uh, most things I did, I kind of did to extremes, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that's a lot of us addicts do that. We usually go from one extreme to the other.
Right.
So you said your parents divorced when you were 3?
No, when I was like 12 or 13.
Oh, 12 to 13. I know I heard 3 in there.
Yep.
And that did not affect you negatively. So during childhood, was this one of the first times that you actually used drugs? When did your drug use or alcohol use, or I guess just whether it was compulsive behavior or whatever, when did that start? Is there anything you look back and remember?
It started in like 8th grade, just like smoking weed, was the first thing. And then, just like normal, like high school parties up north, uh, like keg parties at like reservoirs and, pretty typical, like smoking weed and drinking teenage stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was your personal life like at the time? Did you have friends? Did you have any type of stress going on? What was your day-to-day life like back then?
Uh, Man, it was normal. I had, a good group of friends. It definitely wasn't like I was in high school and it was like a major situation or anything like that. It was uh, just normal, like teenage stuff.
I gotcha.
Yep.
So did you graduate high school and all that?
Yeah. Yep. And college. Yep.
What'd you go to college for?
Business.
Anything particular in business or just a general degree?
Just general, like business management.
Okay. So you were in high school, started doing weed, doing keg
Yep.
parties. What was college like? Did college go into any type of, because just even if you don't have an addiction problem, so many people they go to college and they start showing signs of addiction issues, even if they don't have it. One thing some people don't realize, when you go into college, there's 2 types of addicts, they believe, or the way they separate is there's abusers and there's addicts. Now, abusers are people, a perfect example is a kid in college who he goes off the walls. But once he gets a job in the real world, he's able to quit drinking or quit whatever he was using, which
Right.
means once you give them a reason to do so, they actually can. Addicts, on the other hand, one of the definitions of us is even though we see bad things happening, we continue on with our behavior.
Right. Right. In college, like smoking weed thing became, uh, just like an everyday thing. And then, drinking, I've never, uh, I consider myself an alcoholic, but I've never really drank alcoholically. I just consider that because, just from going to AA, that's like the program that I'm in. But in college I experimented, man. I got into like a little bit of harder drugs and, not like on an everyday thing, but I definitely, experimented with like harder things.
What type of harder things were you experimenting with?
Like cocaine, Molly, ecstasy.
So it seemed, unfortunately, it seems that's typical in college. A lot of, especially the mollies, are a big thing.
Right. More
Now,
like social things, like things you stay up all night, partying with people, and it's, not things where it's like, dark addiction yet.
that's a good way of putting it. Dark addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah, because for those few moments, you kind of feel like you have everything in control,
Yeah.
and then I
Yeah.
guess the dark. I guess you could say the darkness then settles in.
Yeah. Yeah. My story starts like in my late, like more in my late 20s. I'm 40 now, and then it went on for like 12 years. It got like very dark, but it's when I moved to Florida, that's like when it just started to evolve really into that part of it.
Gotcha. So once you graduate college, what does life look like? Did you immediately hop into the real world, or were you still kind of partying and stuff? Like, did you just go home and continue your ways, or did you actually try and get your shit together?
No, I stayed in a college town in upstate New York. I had like a 6-year relationship. I worked in like a custom wood shop doing woodwork and um, still smoking weed like every day, but it didn't um it wasn't like consequential.
What were you, like, an apprentice in the wood shop?
Yeah, I was like an apprentice, and we built like kitchens, cabinets, libraries, and
Oh,
uh we brought them all to like everything was like in New York City. So an architect would get a job and draw the plans up with a client in New York City, and then they would hire the company I worked for, and we would build them and then drive it all down to install it in New York. And yeah, I was still like at that time I wasn't like a full blown like hippie, but I was just like living like that lifestyle. I just
yeah.
like snowboarding. I just wasn't in like a major hurry to like jump into like a corporate job or anything like immediately in life. I kind of just wanted to I guess I always looked at it like I have my entire life to work, and I really was just like enjoying, not just like a very stressful lifestyle. I was just kind of like,
I
probably took
think
the
the best
college
word
thing a
to
little too far.
Gotcha. I think the best word to describe it, and I could be wrong, but you can mistake me, is you were no rush to grow up too fast.
Absolutely.
You still
Absolutely.
wanted to have those least amount of responsibilities, it sounds like.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
See, my thing was, I don't remember if I wanted to grow up quickly. I guess I kind of did. I got thrown into growing up quickly because I became a car salesman when I was very young, and that's like an adult job where you hang out with adults all day.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you kind of have to grow up a little quicker. But so your mid-20s, you're in a 6-year relationship. Did that help you with the drugs and alcohol, or were you still partying a little bit?
Yeah, man. I was like relatively grounded. Like that relationship kept me pretty grounded, and I really didn't I didn't really like party after college. It was more um just like the smoking thing was like always there. But I was consistently working, and the relationship was great. Everything was like pretty solid, and then we traveled to Florida together. I transitioned from there to Florida uh, with the idea of starting to grow up. I was like 26, and uh, just kind of like some family pressures. It was just like, what are you still doing in like upstate New York? And time to start like moving forward and starting some new chapters.
So you were being encouraged to grow up.
Yeah, definitely. Like, where is this going kind of thing.
Did you find that to be a good thing or a bad thing? Were you happy when did you kind of want to grow up at all at a certain point, or were you still in the phase like, oh, this sucks, I don't want to get old too fast?
It was probably 50-50. I was ready for like a new chapter, and um, my vision of Florida, what I envisioned it back then when I came to visit, my mom lived down here, was like the beach, and uh, it seemed like kind of like a fun transition, like a place to come down to. And but I was probably ready like 50-50. I didn't want to like jump in the corporate world, but I was probably ready for like a new chapter, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, in this entire time, you had a degree for business, so it's not like you didn't have that in your back pocket.
Right, right.
So once you get down to Florida, what changes in your life? What kind of things were different from New York?
Well, like how it changed was I moved down here and then my next door neighbors, this was like the prime time in South Florida for pill mills were for like Oxycontin and Roxy's and everything
Yep.
like that. Um, so I ended up my neighbors that I lived next door to, they asked me for a ride to like to the doctors one day, which I legitimately thought like, was going to the doctors. I didn't know we were going to like a pill mill. And I had like 6 months when I moved here. I was just like a waiter, an apartment right on the ocean, working in the morning. In the afternoon, I had like my dog at the beach. It was like a nice transition down here. Uh, and then, man, that one ride to the doctor's office that day, like completely shifted like my entire life course. And, I took them there, and the next thing you know, it wasn't hard to talk me into it, but they talked me into doing the appointment. They were as many people as they could get to do it. My neighbors were like full blown like opiate addicts and going to like, 3 and 4 doctors a week all over. And, they're involved in drugs like heavily, and I don't even know, I
You think
know
you're
about
just
them.
taking someone to the actual doctor?
Yeah, man, I'm
Naive.
very naive to the scene. There's a whole scene going on down here, and like I just got exposed to it. And I did it that day, man. I remember like they're Roxy's, they're like 30 milligram Roxy's, and I did
Yep.
one. I did one, and it was like I remember I went to work and I had like energy, but I was like super calm and like kind of like Bill talks about in the big book, like with alcohol, like I had arrived, I was like, wow, like this is like the missing link to me, this is amazing.
When he tells the story about how he was able to speak better, he was the life
Right.
of the party. I think he said something along those lines.
Right.
I mean, I hate
And
to
yeah,
say it, most people they don't realize. Obviously, this is not an advertisement for it, but that stuff feels good. It does. It makes you feel like. I mean, at the same time, it's destroying you slowly. But in the meantime, it's just like what they say in the beginning: you take the drugs, then eventually, towards the end, the drugs take you.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I remember like I did them for a while, and I had no idea what like withdrawals were. I didn't know the other side of the coin at all. And then I remember like not having them one day and like getting in the shower and like my heart's racing. I'm in withdrawals, but I don't know what that is. And I was at work and somebody else had them at work. And I remember like asking them if they had any, and they were like, they didn't have any. And I just remember being like, man, I feel like I have like the flu. Like like it's just so naive to like the whole thing. And and then they're like, well, no, you're dope sick. And I was like, it kind of like blew me away. But like at that point, um, the hooks were in me. And
That's a great show. Did you ever see the show Michael Keaton Dope Sick?
yeah, yeah, I just watched that actually.
What'd you think of it? Being someone from that scene, because they
Yeah,
mentioned the pill mills and all that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's spot on, man. And it evolved quick. Like within maybe within like a 3 to 4 month period of that time, like the girlfriend's gone, the apartment's gone, the dog is gone.
Wow, that's
Like
quickly 3 to 4 months.
yeah, like it was just quick. And
You mean from the moment you started using until that? So from the moment you started using, only 3 or 4 months later, you've lost everything.
yeah, yeah, I had to move into like somebody else's apartment. And it was a quick period, and it might have been like 5 or 6 months, but it was a short period of time, and like um, you just you just change into a completely different person. And the people I'm around, and just everything about me becomes like lying, sneaking. That's the only thing I think about, like when I wake up. That's the last thing I think about when I go to bed, about the next morning. And
Do you
constantly
remember?
like,
No, I'm listening.
yeah, no, just constantly just in, um like it just has complete control over you. And you're just it's like being on like a timer, being sick constantly. You know what I mean? Like you're always just, that's the only thing you're thinking about, is like how many you have for the day, how much you need to budget them out. And you always end up running out and not saving anything for the next morning. And you have those plans to do it, and then the next thing you know, like you have to go to work in the morning, and you're making like 100 phone calls and running around, and then you end up being like 2 hours late for work. And it's just a nightmare, man.
Yeah, I remember those days. I remember those days. At the time, you said you're employed. Did it affect your employment at all? Were you, I mean, because obviously, if you keep showing up too late to work, I'm assuming they're going to say something and fire you eventually.
What ended up happening there, I did pretty well there. And then uh I met these guys from Morgan Stanley that worked in finance. And like this one of the brokers came in with his family and his wife and two kids, and they were like the worst possible kids, like just like little terrorists at this table. And
Little terrorists.
yeah, like they were just like the worst behaved kids. And I just did a really good job, like staying calm and like taking care of them. And then the guy uh just came in like the next week with me, and brought his like business partner in for lunch. And like they pulled me aside and were like, hey, listen, like I saw you like take care of my kids, and I saw you like stay calm with everything. And I'd like to bring you in, basically as just like an administrative assistant for them. And
Kind of
yeah,
start off
so
at the ground floor.
yeah, so it was kind of exciting, man. Like I went from working in a restaurant to like the nicest building in West Palm Beach for like Morgan Stanley. And but I brought that habit with me. And like the one thing, like back then, it uh like if I didn't have something, I could still like get through the day, even though it was like horrible. um it wasn't like later on in my addictions, like when I couldn't even get up and go to work or anything like that.
While you were there, because I did phone sales myself for almost 10 years. So I know the whole make 100 phone calls or 2 hours talk time. They want to make sure you're on the phone for talking to people. Did it
Right.
affect that? You said it did, like it took a little bit.
I'm
So
actually
no, I'm
actually
listening.
there. Yeah, actually there, like these guys just did like face to face. They didn't do the phones.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was literally like, I I was just like the front line for their business, and I answered the phones. I like trade tickets. I was really just like a glorified secretary. And I did that for like 8 months. And then I went on a boat ride with these kids, like some other people I know that were in sales. I went out, and mind you, I'm making like $480 a week at Morgan Stanley as an assistant. I'm making like nothing. But I go out to like this place down here. It's called Peanut Island, and I'm like with these sales kids, and they all have like boats and houses. And um, one of them, like, he was like, "Do you want to come work for me?" And he's just a good salesman, and he was just explaining to me like what they could do. And I regret it. I regret it, like looking back. Um, I wish I had just like stayed buttoned down and like built a career at like a company like that. But it's just my story. Like I literally that next Monday I went in, I resigned from it. And I went and worked for like a water sales company. It was like a horrible job. And, and then it ended up like closing down like, I think like 6 months. I was in it for like 6 months. And, like through all of this time, like my disease is just absolutely, it's growing with the pills, it's getting really bad. And I finally,
Progressing.
yeah, it's just progressing, man. And, I'm just losing more things. It's just getting dark. And eventually, it was like a couple of friends that I know. I asked one of their like older brothers to borrow money, like to cover my rent. I'm being evicted from my apartment. And then he was like, I can't lend you money, but I can refer you to like a sales job where like, somebody I know who's like not that talented at sales is like doing really well. Um, I went there and that's where I got introduced to phone sales, into like cold calling. Um, and man, somebody I knew like gave me an opportunity to live with them because I got evicted, and like the deal with me living there was like I can't do pills or like get high, and or they would kick me out.
What was the reason
And
for that? Were they those guys were sober? They were against it.
he like drank and like smoked weed, but like it's just like a completely different level, like when you're doing hard drugs versus just like drinking and smoking weed.
Yeah, I know
Uh,
what you're saying.
and I'm not glorifying one or the other. I'm just saying it's just like you just turn into a different person. And
Because some, excuse me, some people can live their lives and just have a few beers and smoke like a half a joint, and they don't have that thing inside of them that clicks over into addiction,
right,
where all of a sudden it's like, well, more beer and more weed, more and more until you're have a story like yours.
right. And man, um I did very well. Like I was smoking weed all the time, but I've never really been a drinker. That wasn't like a major part of my story. And I stayed off of pills for like I think like 2.5 years. And
That's great.
yeah, and like the company I worked for, I made very good money like on the phones. And it changed my life. And like I tell this like in meetings when I tell my story, like everything before I got into like the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and like learned about like the disease, until I really had like knowledge of it, I couldn't there's nothing I could ever really do for it. And so like back then, even though I was just smoking weed primarily, I considered that like sober. But in all reality, like my disease was just like gaining speed that whole time. And I would tell people I was sober, like
How
because
do
I
you
wasn't.
use it though? Because so for me, that's a slippery slope, because I think that some people who are smoking pot can still be considered sober, because now it's legal in a lot of states. So you have to say to yourself, if somebody's in recovery, are they allowed to have a beer from time to time if that was not their addiction? Like I know a girl, sweetheart, she's one of the girls in our group, and every now and then, like once a month, maybe once every 2 months, she'll have a glass of wine or two. Which I
Right,
say to her, I mean, that's okay because that's your journey and you can handle it. Like me, there is no going back and trying and dabbling. I will go all the way with alcohol.
right, right. And man, what you just said like hits the spot as far as like everybody's like journey is, their own journey. For me, how I look at it too is like if I start smoking weed right now, like some people can just wait till after work, not think about it for 5 days and stuff like that. Like the minute I start, every time it just becomes like a everyday thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It evolves to where like before I do anything, I always think like, oh, like I have to do this, I have to smoke or this or that. And like there's no real repercussions from that. But at the same time, how my addiction is, it keeps my disease like it doesn't. I'm not treating my disease at all. And exactly like what happened was like eventually, like I was doing very well for a long time. Like I got engaged, my fiance is pregnant, I have a house, like everything is like moving completely forward. And then I get some pills and I have them in my closet for like almost 2 months, I think. Like I just had a bottle like in my, and then like on a Thursday, I think it was like just a random day, I was like, I'm gonna do like two this morning, and then like I won't do anything all weekend, but like I'm just gonna do them. And like I did them and I drove like 45 minutes to work, didn't even go inside, like turned around, drove all the way back home to go get like a few more for the day. And then the next thing you know, I probably had like 30, and about like the next thing you know, it's like a week and a half later and they're all gone. And I've done them every single day since then. And like it just turned into, then I just started buying them, and it just started up again. And then this was like a life altering point, like on December 18th, 2010. I was in a vehicle like overloaded from like a hardware store, I can say, with cinder blocks to like do a construction project at my house. And I got into like terrible car accident. I was in a coma for like many weeks.
Oh shit.
Um, yeah, like pronounced 3 different times. They brought like the priest in, with my family, like pneumonia when I was in like an induced coma. And I survived, but couldn't I had my vocal cords were crushed. I couldn't use my right arm. Um, Man, it was just like a terrible car accident. I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk, I couldn't eat. And it was terrible. And then I got out of the hospital, and like 17 days later, my daughter was born. So like my daughter's born and I'm like brought into the delivery room. I'm like in a wheelchair with like neck braces and arm braces, like cursing God that like how am I supposed to be a father, and I can't even like, I can't even like take a shower right now. And this that transition was now I'm not going to a pill mill, but now I'm going to like a legitimate pain doctor, but they're giving me, like Roxy's, Dilaudid, Percocets for like a step down.
Let me ask you this. After
Like
you got into the
crazy.
accident, were you happy knowing that you were going to get pills and that you were still alive?
Um, I was so depressed and I was like so angry and everything like that. But like the addict side of me, like it was like I like every month when it was like doctor day, I'd go and get like 600 pills of different, painkillers and like Xanax and sleeping Seroquel, like. And but like I within this is like, like really when I just started, my whole family like came around me to help me and like, support me and like help me like back to life. And it was just like a nightmare year after my accident. Like every month I would go to the doctor, and then I would use everything within like 2 weeks. Um, like I had no quality of life. I wasn't like rebuilding anything. And, I would end up in, I would end up like honestly just like suicidal. I would end up in, the different psych units and emergency rooms. Um, it was just like a very, very dark time. And, at that point, I started like IV using, like the progression started more with that. And
So what were you using? So you used, were you cooking it and shooting it up?
yeah, then like eventually like the people I was around,
I was
you
gonna say, who
know,
taught you that? I mean, that doesn't
yeah,
seem like something you go right to without someone helping you along the way.
Yeah, somebody, somebody that I was like, when I would run out of pills, like I would go get it from somebody else. And I just noticed too, like when I was in the hospital and then they would like, they always give you something like, IV, like any of the medications they give you. I would just notice like when they would do that, like how much, just the effects would be like that much more different. And then I lost, then I'm doing that, and then I lost, my fiance, my daughter, I just like
You
it,
look, how did that happen? So what happened where your fiance left? What's the
um,
story behind that?
yeah, so she basically, I mean, man, she's a saint. Like she held on for as long, way past what anybody should have. And um, she just came home one day, I'm sitting in the kitchen, shooting up, and it's like, uh, we have like an 8-month-old daughter or something,
So you were
it's
doing
just,
this right in front of her.
no, I would try to like hide it,
Oh,
but
she kind of surprised you.
yeah, she surprised me and like came in and yeah, and then pretty much like from there, uh, this is like what happened in West Palm Beach down here is like all the pill mills were shut down. And this is when it wasn't fentanyl yet, but then like there's like news articles about it. Like the DEA, they thought they were going to like control the epidemic by like shutting down the doctors and like restricting the pharmacies and stuff like that. And then like heroin came in like 10 times stronger. Um, like much cheaper, and it just you have like a huge population of people down here who are like addicted to opiates, and now there's like a way cheaper, better, stronger version. And man, then it just that just kicked in with a really bad heroin habit for me.
How'd you
And
find the heroin the first time?
this is just somebody I was getting pills through, man. They had that. And um like they talk about in AA, like the yets, like the different things, like you say I would never do that. And for me it was like I'll never shoot up. And then I saw people shooting up, and I thought that was like, I'll never do that. And then all of a sudden I'm doing that every day. And then heroin, it was like I only do pills, and I'm not like that bad, I don't do heroin. And then next thing you know, you're doing heroin. And man, it caught me into a vicious cycle for for many years. I just uh you know I would go to AA. I would be on like a run for 8 months, and then I'd end up, I'd go psych units, detoxes, just not building any form of life. And then I'd get into like a halfway house somewhere. I would go to meetings, but I would never open the big book. I would never get a sponsor. I would never work steps. Um, I would just go to meetings and like, and again, like this is just like my journey. Um, there's only so much like recovery you can get from, for me, just going to a meeting and not sharing, not working steps, not working a program. It can keep me sober for like a period of time. Um, but eventually what would happen for me is I would move out of the halfway house, rent a room or get an apartment or something. I've always been talented on the phones, so I would make some money. Like all of a sudden, like, I'd get the apartment, I'd get the car, I'd get my daughter back in my life, I'd be paying child support. Everything would start to like build. And I really did believe in my heart, like I'll never do that again. And like that, like it's finally over, like it's done. And then, just like when I had relapsed the that last time on like those Roxys, man, like every single time, eventually, I would just break down, man. I'd either be really happy about something, really sad about something, mad. I'd have some kind of emotion where my disease would like come in, and it would sound like a good idea. Like, okay, I'm just gonna go get like one cap of heroin, like same old story. And then, I'm just gonna do it like tonight, and then I'll get a few days sleep, and it won't. And every single time it would be like a period later, and I would look back and be like, I've done it every single day, and like you said in the beginning of this, how like every time I would take it and then it would take me, and I would just be in the cycle of just like addiction again. And
And the best part is, 'cause I'm the same way, we always think it's gonna be better this time around. I had something in my brain, it was like, "Well, just one more time." It kept saying just one more time, and like I thought something was gonna change. And obviously that's not the case. We just go back into the same old habits.
every time, and like all of a sudden I would do well. I'd be making like these good commission checks, and I'd have like no car. I'd make like sometimes like the most money in the office every week, and like I'd have no car, no apartment, like staying in hotel, like people in the office would be like looking at me like,
What's
how do
going on?
yeah, like I have like this, I have like a wife and kids and like a stable life, and I make like a fraction of what you're making every week. And like for me, it was like every week I'd just be like giving away thousands of dollars. And this went on until like around like 2016. And I was in a detox, and I reached out to my family, and then my family like all got together and sent me to Georgia I was always in rehabs that were like Medicaid rehabs, and like, really like low end places. And they all stepped up and like put me in like a nice rehab in Georgia that was like uh they call it a dual diagnosis rehab. It was like for addiction as well as mental health and
Yep,
like
I've read a lot
trauma.
about that. It's called comorbidity also.
Right,
As
right.
me personally, I've said it on the podcast before, I'm bipolar. I've got some OCD, ADHD, so that alongside with the addiction.
Yeah, yeah. It's like treating multiple things. And
And it's kind of hard because for the clinicians, it's like, is this guy depressed because he's using drugs, or are the drugs causing him to be depressed? It's like it's a vicious cycle, and it's hard to figure out what's going
absolutely.
on.
Absolutely. And that's what would happen to me is like I'd go into like, a psych unit or something, or a detox, and like the psychiatrist, or I think it's called psychiatrist, they would walk in and like they go patient to patient, and like they'd walk in and meet me for like 3 minutes, and they're like, all right, well, you're bipolar, you're manic, we're going to put you on these meds, and you're depressed and everything. And in the back of my head, I'd be like, it's probably true, but like maybe we should like diagnose that like 3 months into sobriety or something. I've also been up for like a week and like, I've been on like a run for 8 months or something, like I'm in day 2 of detoxing. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm depressed, bipolar, and
You'll be showing all those symptoms due to the
yeah,
withdrawals.
yeah, absolutely. And
I guess it makes sense. Clear a person of all their symptoms and then make that decision or that diagnosis.
right, right. And this is where I stayed there for like 9 months. And
Long time.
yeah, I stayed for 9 months, and I went to AA every single day. But again, I was the first one into the meeting, or I was like the last one into the meeting, the first one out of the meeting. Maybe I shared sometimes, but I still thought I was like better than everybody in AA. I would clean up, and maybe not like better than people, but like smarter than people. Like
I'm smiling because I think all of us addicts go, well, I'm not one of them. Those guys have this issue and that issue. We all just say, well, I'm not one of them. We
right,
all feel different, and it's such bullshit.
right. And they were like, man, most of these people, I'm in Georgia, they're like, a lot of them were probably like mild alcoholics, like I'm coming from like South Florida, like IV doing drugs and everything. And like, that's my mentality though. It's just like, I've made more money than that person, or I'm smarter than that person. Like, just judging, just like judging and like pushing it off. And, but the one thing I want to say about that too is like, a seed was planted in me at that point. And like the one thing I did notice, if like I'm just being totally honest, is like people were laughing in the meetings. And there was like, no matter how good or bad their lives looked, like materially, the materialistic, there was like a community, and people were like laughing, and like they were, and my life wasn't bad at that point, like I'm living in a nice townhouse in the treatment center, like I'm eating, I'm going to the gym, but I wasn't happy at all, like that. And like what I came to learn, for my journey is like these people had gone through the steps, like the 12 steps. And at that point, like I was fixing everything with me from the outside. Like I still thought sobriety was like the apartment, the girlfriend, the car, being back at work and making money. That's what I envisioned like sobriety was. And I didn't realize that these people had gone through the steps and like made a contact with a higher power, had gone ahead and like looked back at their life and like done this, had like worked with things, had gone through like the 8th and 9th steps and like made amends to people. And we're just like genuinely had done like some inside work, and I just hadn't done that yet. But again, like I said in the beginning, like and I don't mean to like preach AA on here, like this is just like my
No, it's
journey.
okay. I'm a
Yeah,
big believer. I got my big book over there. I'm a big believer in it. AA is part of the reason I started Addicts Anonymous, because what they did was they took, it was from the Oxford group, a religious movement that had
right.
they had a bunch of the steps already. Like they were the ones who came up with the moral inventory, admitting you're right, or I'm sorry, admitting your wrongs to someone else. So I believe they had 6 of the steps, and then
6,
Bill
right.
added another 6. So I kind of do the same thing. I'll send you my 10 steps later. A lot of
Okay.
them are AA steps, but a lot of them are not.
Okay.
So it's basically an updated, because the one thing I kind of know about Bill W. is he used the most up-to-date information he had at that time. So with all the research that's been done, he might have fine-tuned AA a little bit. We'll never know, obviously. But as
So you're
someone
saying it
who's
was from like the
reader,
30s.
1939 is when it was published.
Right. Okay.
That's when
And
the big book was published.
it 100%, like the first time later on when I got into the big book and I read like the doctor's opinion, because I never thought it was a disease.
Yeah.
I just thought I made horrible decisions, and when I like a qualified member of AA like walked me through the big book, like the first 164 pages,
Mhm.
I was like blown away. I was like, oh, this is me. Like this is written, like the jaywalker and like these different stories, these different things in there. Like I read it and like, I guess what I'm trying to say is I could relate. And I think
Yeah,
that's
Jay
like
Walker, if I'm not mistaken, that was the guy who just kept jaywalking no matter if he got hit by cars or not.
right. And he'd be like calling his family from the hospital and stuff like that. And
Yep.
like, and like, and then to me, I was like, oh, the jaywalk, like I'm the jaywalker with drugs. Like
Yep.
I swear I'm never going to do it again. And I continue like time after time, just like run out into traffic, and like normal people must look at me like a jaywalker. Like, why, how did you go back to that after what just happened last time? And, um, so, but like a seed was planted there, and I, I moved back down. My daughter's like 7 or 8 years old. I moved back to Florida, and I stopped going to meetings. I don't go to like one meeting when I get back. I get back around like all the old people working on the telephones. And not that the problem was the telephones, it was like the people I was around were still like actively using.
Well, that's what they
And
say, people, places, and things. And people is the first thing you need to change. You are who you hang around with.
absolutely, absolutely. And what happened was like, I probably made it like 3 weeks, like a little period of time. Nobody was doing opiates around me, but they were doing like methamphetamines. And, I did a very small amount one day. And then I worked for like 14 hours and like opening up accounts, I'm like, oh wow, like you don't get sick from this drug, and this isn't my drug of choice. And and I'm sick, I'm still sick. So my disease is telling me like it's like you've just been clean for 9 months. Like you can do this just at work, like it's not going to go back to how it was. And man, that
like we were saying before, it was just a feeling of this time's going to be different.
absolutely,
I'm not that guy. It'll be different. I can handle my shit.
absolutely, yeah, going to be totally different. And man, it wasn't I got the apartment. I started rebuilding. I was like making money, and like I'm seeing my daughter all the time. um it's sad, but I'm just being like honest. Like I'd have her for the weekend. I wouldn't sleep like the entire weekend, and I'd be taking like Xanax to calm myself. I'd be taking Xanax to like calm myself down, so I'm not like acting weird and paranoid. And then eventually, like the heroin like came back in, but now it's fentanyl. And the this goes on for like probably like 8 months, and sometimes I'm staying up for like a week and a half at a time on meth. I'm staying up and I'm doing like heroin and Xanax to like balance myself, and I'm just with way worse people at this point. Just like my crowd got even like the whole meth world too is just like very like it got really weird, and like very like paranoid crazy people. And it got really dark. And like another thing is like with like the fentanyl, um myself included, we're all like overdosing all the time, and that never happened to me in the past.
Well, that's I saw something that to me was scary, where they took a penny. It was a picture I saw. You take the penny and you put the amount of fentanyl that you need to overdose next to it, and you'll see it is like an eighth of a penny. Like there's like no way to dose yourself correctly.
Right.
I'm not saying there's a good way to do it, but I think at least if you know your limit, you know what I mean, it'll help you stay alive, which is the good old fashioned saying, dead people don't recover.
Right. Yeah, that's a powerful statement. 100%. And this became like whoever I was with, we would always have Narcan. And
Harm reduction.
yeah, and but like we're insane, and we're up for days at a time, and then like we're Narcanning each other constantly. Like it became a completely normal thing for whoever I was with to just stop breathing and like be dead and blue in the face around me, and like Narcan them real quick, and then they snap out of it and then start like yelling at you because you wasted their high. Like from their point of view, they were like, no, I was enjoying it, and I was like nodding out, like I was completely fine. And you're the one who's just like, no, you literally, like, your heart was stopped and you weren't breathing. And but it became like that became like normal, like all the time. And this went on, this went on until like the last month of like really like my addiction. I I walked like 16 miles one night on meth, with a pocket full of like heroin and meth. And like my plan was to lock myself up we call it Baker acting in Florida, like when you go to the hospital and tell them you're suicidal. And I couldn't stop, and I knew I was like so close to death. You're playing Russian roulette, and I just knew, like, I knew I was like close to the end. And so I went on like this crazy walk to a hospital that I knew, and I sat in the emergency room for like 18 hours, just going in and out of the bathroom. like going up, going down, just like using all of like the drugs that I have. And this probably sounds like insane. And then like at like 3 o'clock in the morning, like where the hospital is like in like the ghetto Riviera Beach, Florida here. Like it's a really like ghetto area. Like a gunshot victim came in, and like all of his friends came in, like gang members. And I'm so out of it, and I'm like talking to everybody, like trying to calm people down, and like I'm just so out of my mind. And I'm like, these people, like their friend is dying of a gunshot wound, and I'm like talking to them. And like there's a cop in every emergency room, and like the cop came out and like kicked all of them out of the emergency room. And then like he looked at me and was like, man, I've been on like a 14-hour shift, and you've been sitting in that chair like the entire time. Like this isn't, like there's no loitering here. Like you either have to leave, like, or like, what are you doing? And like, I had just run out of everything. And then like, I'm like, I'm really depressed. And he was like, I don't know what that means. Like, what are you doing here? And like, I was like, I'm just depressed, man. Like I'm suicidal. And he's like, buddy, like just sign yourself in, like either leave or sign yourself in. And I'm like, all right. And so I signed myself in. They take me in, they take me back to like the psych unit area, and I sleep for like a day. I had been up for like over a week probably, and I sleep for like a day. And then like I wake up and I go to, I think I went to like the little cafeteria thing, like got some food or something. And then it like really hit me, like they're not going to give me any meds in here. You know what I mean? Like they're not going to give me any Suboxone. They're not going to give me anything for this. And like this turned into like the worst like 11-day detox, cold turkey detox of like my life. Like coming off, I was so sleep deprived, and my body was like I was so skinny, and like I was in such rough shape. But like the amount of fentanyl I was doing too, it was like just a really hard detox. And usually it lasts like 3 to 5 days. And this went on for like 11 days. And I remember like I called my dad, and it was the first time I had talked to him in probably like over a year or something. And I just asked him, I'm like, can you help me like go to a halfway house? And like, the whole time I'm detoxing, I'm still so convinced I'm never going to get high again. Like I finally faced the music with like the detox that for months I wanted to stop, but I couldn't. And I was so fearful of like the detox and how bad it was going to be. And, my dad, I remember him telling me like, I'm going to Western Union you like $500 or something. Like, I don't think I should do this, but I'm going to do it. But like, make sure like you go. And like, they gave me like a sheet of halfway houses to call. And I remember they give you a bus ticket, and I walked to like the bus stop. I charged my phone in like a Walgreens bathroom. I called like one number on the sheet, and the guy was like, hey, listen, we don't have any beds, but like, don't go out and use, like, call me back in like an hour. I'm going to be proactive and like make phone calls for you. But like, if you need to talk to me but like he was just like a good, like sober person. And I was like, no problem. I'm definitely not going to use, like, I never want to do that again. And like, I hung up that phone, and like a possessed person, like the next thing I do is like call the meth people, like get picked up from Walgreens. And like in my head, I'm like, there's no beds, there's no way I'm getting into treat. Like I had done nothing really to like make that situation happen. And I remember like 2 hours later, I'm like in the Hilton hotel with a bunch of these people, and I'm in the bathroom, and I'm like shooting up. And I remember just like looking in the mirror and just thinking to myself, like it hit me like how sick I was. Like after that 11 days, like I made it. Like, I was so convinced I was like at least gonna like go into like a halfway house for 6 months. Like I thought I was like at least starting like a new chapter, and like I made it like an hour. And just like sad. And like 2 weeks later, like when I'm out of money and like the people I'm with are completely tired of me, you know what I mean? Like that whole world is just like survival, and everybody's like, plotting and scheming. And like, once I was like done and had nothing to offer and stuff like that, I ended up in like another hospital, like covered in abscesses. And so they brought me in for like IV antibiotics, like to treat me for like a week. And I made it like all the way across the week in there. And then they were giving me like I don't know what they were giving me, but they were giving me some kind of pain medicine, but like, it was probably like a 5 milligram Percocet. It was just something for like the abscesses, but it was like enough where it like stepped me down from like what I was doing. And then, and again, this is just like my journey, but like I said a prayer to God. They call it like a foxhole prayer. I said a prayer to God like the night before they were going to release me. And like I just said, like, if you can help me get to Georgia, because Georgia is like the only bit of sanity. Like I remember like that 9 months and like the people from AA and like going to LA Fitness, like I just have like, that's the only like good memories I have. Like, God, if you can help me get there tomorrow, whatever your purpose is for me in life, like I'll fulfill that purpose. And like, I don't even know how much I believed in God. I don't even know why I thought of exactly like that prayer to say, but like that's what I thought of. The next day, the nurse, she comes in and gives me like my discharge paperwork, and like I'm out of options. Like I'm gonna be like homeless in like Lake Worth, Florida. Like I have no more phone calls to make, like nothing to do. And then I asked the nurse to like borrow her cell phone, and she lets me call like the rehab center where I went in Georgia. And I call the guy, his name's Daryl, and he's at Walmart. It's like Sunday, and he's there with like all the rehab kids, like at Walmart, getting them their supplies. And I'm like, Daryl, like I have no money, no insurance, like a dirty white t-shirt and shorts on. Like I have no possessions left in life. Like if there's any way you can like let me in, and I'll do like a work for stay, like I'll come and like I'll drive the van. I'm talented on the phones. I'll do like intake phone calls from like potential clients and their families. Like if you can let me like come there, I won't like, I guess the word's like fraternize, like I won't like mingle with all the clients or like the girls, and like, I'll just stay in my own lane, and like I'll do like everything you ask for me. And he was like, listen, I'm going to church. I got to drop these guys off. Like I'll call you in like 4 or 5 hours, but like I don't know like what you can possibly, like I don't know. And like to me that was like a polite no. Like, like I just remember like I told the nurse like, oh, my ride's coming in like a few hours. Can I just order like the hospital lunch? Like I'm just trying to get some food in me and like buy as much time before like I have to go out. And this is like July 23rd of 2019. So it's like 100 degrees out in South Florida. It's just like the middle of summer down here. And then like a few hours later, like I'm just sitting there, and like the telephone rings, and it's like my mom. And my, again, I haven't talked to her in like a year and a half probably. And she's just like, I spoke to Daryl. I bought you like a plane ticket to Georgia. Like it left at like 9 o'clock that night or something, and it's like 1 in the afternoon. Um, she's like, and I could tell like she was completely, I had just like terrorized. Like I like to use that word because it's like the people that loved me and everybody, uh like I just hurt them so much. And like every single time they stood by me and helped me with like that next halfway house or opportunity or Western Union, like every single time I completely did the opposite of what I would say and like ran all over them. And you know, she was like, I'm gonna come to the hospital. She picked me up like outside the hospital. Like we didn't go to Walmart, you know what I mean? Like we didn't get lunch, like we didn't do anything. And she just like, you know, dropped me off at the airport. And I sat there like all day. And that prayer to God like came into my head. And like I thought to myself, like, man, maybe God's real. And I thought, you know, like, and if you had asked me like on July 22nd, the chances of the guy letting me into that rehab and winning the lottery, like it would have been you know, like along the same lines. And man, I was so grateful. And I got to the rehab. And you know, I did what I was supposed to do. And I went to every single group. And then like as far as the meetings go, you know, they talk about like doing the 90 and 90 when you get into meetings. I easily did like 250 meetings. Like I did like
You were all in. Like this time,
all
you were like, pardon my language. You were like, fuck it, I'm all in.
all into meetings. And like I knew from like my journey, rehab like it's like a foundation. And it's like you said about the people, places, and things. It's a healthy environment to separate yourself from, and you know, to be around like a support system and everything like that. But like I knew that like long-term sobriety comes from AA. Like I knew, you know, no matter how long I stayed there, that's where it would come from. And man, I was like a model client. Like I worked for the rehab, driving the vans. I went to every single group, and like not only like went to group, but like I kept like a positive vibe in every group, and like got really involved. I drove the van to the meetings every day and like encouraged people to come. I shared in all the meetings. And you know, right away with like in the first week, I was listening to How It Works, like they read How It Works.
Mhm.
And that was just like the longest reading I heard in every meeting, but I never paid attention in meetings in the past. And like it finally hit me like how it works. Like this is how the program works. You like work the steps. And so, you know, it may have been like a week and a half or something. I got a sponsor. Um, you know, we got in on the steps. We started moving on the steps. I got like halfway through the steps with him. I did my fifth step and, you know, went through all my fourth steps up. But he had like, and I talk to this guy still today. Like it's nothing personal against him. But he had like a bunch of sponsees, and we like rushed through those steps initially. Like what happened was I was in a meeting. It was like a newcomer meeting, and you had to say like how much time you had when it came around the circle, and then like what step you were on. And like, you know, I'm only like 5 weeks into the program or 6 weeks in or something. And I'm like, you know, Mike, you know, I have like 40 something days or 50 days, and like I'm on step 6. And like one of the old timers, like after the meeting, like, you know, like the godfather of the meeting or something, like the guy with like 35 years, you know, we always talked after the meeting, and he's like, you're on step 6 already, right? And I'm like, yeah. Like you know, I read the first 164, all this stuff. And he was like, do you think you're dying of this disease? And I was like, well, I feel healthy now, but I feel like if I go back out, I'm either going to die or like kill myself, because I'm so tired of like the life. I just don't want to live like that anymore. And he was like, okay, so from my experience, he's like, the sponsor you have and the steps you're working, it's basically like somebody like 5 or 6 weeks ago told you you have cancer, you have like a deadly disease, and you're at the walk-in clinic, like getting treatment. You went to like the urgent care facility around you and like not even to a hospital. And he was like, my recommendation, and like, again, man, anything people are telling me at this point, there's no more like bullshitting, or excuse, I was just nowhere, there's no more like anything you tell me to do, like I'm willing to, and I'm like trainable and I'm teachable, and I'll follow your lead if I think it's like, if you're in sobriety and farther down the road and it sounds like logical advice, like I'll take it. And he told me like, you need to call that sponsor, and like not rudely, but you need to, he used the word like fire him. I don't really like that term, but like, he's like, you need to take a step back for like a week or two in meetings, and you need to find like the guy that you don't want to work the steps with because you think he's going to make you work them like the hardest and the most thorough, and is like the most passionate about this. And I did it. I went home, I made the phone call, and like a week later, I was at I used to go to meetings at night by myself, like after the treatment center. I would take the van, and I went to a random small meeting, and then like this guy who's like family to me, his name's Charles, he was like, he running the meeting. And then after the meeting, it came up and was like, Mike, how you doing? And I didn't recognize him at all. I was like, I don't really remember you, I'm sorry. And he's like, yeah, in 2016, when you were at Discovery House at the treatment center, my wife and I used to bring like the Sunday night AA meeting in. And like it hit me. And like, he was like carrying his big book, and like, he's like 65, retired, and just like a full-time AA member that just sponsors people. And like, you know, and it just like, I really believe in God at this point. And I was just like, this is the guy. I'm like, I wasn't even going to come to this meeting. He said he wasn't going to come to this meeting. It just like, it was like a perfect fit. And man, we got into the steps, and like I worked, we worked a thorough version of the steps. And like, he walked me through the first 164 pages, way different than when somebody tells you to go home and read it. It's like taking a class and they tell you just to go home and read it, versus like reading it with like a professor or like a teacher and like somebody explaining it to you. And he like walked me through it. And I didn't, this whole time, he's telling me like, I haven't talked to my daughter in like a long time, and it's like killing me. I haven't talked to my daughter. And he just told me like, you're gonna talk to her, like you're gonna get a year of sobriety, and then you're gonna come back into your daughter's life. And he's like, there's no guarantee, but I'm gonna set you up with like the best possible like foundation to be like a full-time father again, and like really not like pop into her life for 3 months with all these promises and everything. And I did it, man. And I went to meetings every single day, like, like no matter if I wanted to go or didn't want to go, I always went to my meetings. We got through the steps, and then I had like a year and a half of sobriety, and then I drove down to Florida where I live now. I saw my daughter for Christmas, and like super nerve-wracking, like I went to the house and my daughter's like 10 years old, and like she's wearing like a dress, and she's like so excited to see me and like show me her room, and she has like a picture drawn for me, like, like just like the promises, like the gifts of sobriety. And I get to see her and spend Christmas and her birthday. And then I stay for like 3 more months, and then I move. And then, sorry, let me take a step back. And then I plan to move back to Florida to be with her. But like this time around, I call somebody who had like 5 years of sobriety from Florida that I knew. and he was like the first person I told, like when I said I was moving back to Florida, like I feel like I use this example, it would be like a serious gambling addict, like approaching his friends and family, like I'm moving back to Las Vegas. You know what I mean? Like it just sounded like
Insane.
anyone, you know, like anyone that loved or cared for me, like when I said that was like red flags, you know what I mean? Like you're doing so good there in Georgia. And but it wasn't like Georgia that was keeping me sober. It was, you know, for me, it was Alcoholics Anonymous. And like I was sponsoring people at this point. You know, I'm doing service work and I'm helping. And um, so he recommended me to somebody in Florida. I called that person, asked them to be my sponsor. He was like, listen, I got like too many guys, but you know, one of my sponsees, you know, he'll sponsor you when you come down, like the first day you get here, call. And you know, I came down and I didn't listen to that. Like for like 3 weeks, I went to meetings. I asked like multiple people to be my sponsors, and like should be like you know, most people are so willing to do that. And like I'm having such trouble finding a sponsor. And like I don't know why I didn't call them, but like it's just the way it worked out. And then I was like, well, maybe I'll call those guys. And then like I called them. I called Kevin, who's my sponsor now, and he was like, yeah, like I've been waiting for you to call. Like, you know, come meet me at this meeting on Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. And it's like 45 minutes away. And I was like, all right, yeah, I'll be there. And I went to the meeting with him, and I met him like, I think I went to like 3 of those meetings. And I wasn't sure if he was like my sponsor or not. And then like after the meeting, I was like, so like, are you my sponsor? Like, I don't know what's going on. And he was like, and I still am like, I didn't know like what he was part of. And like he is part of a family I'm a part of now, and it's called like the Unfair Advantage. It's like 50 men. It's been around for probably 20 years. A men sponsor family. And like to be part of the family, you have to make like a commitment of meetings every day of the year. You have to go to a meeting. Um, you have to do one service commitment, like bring a meeting to like a detox or a rehab once a week. You have to, that's got to be part of your program. Um, you have to, every Sunday we meet up at 5 o'clock at a pizzeria. We have a back room in there. We all meet and we like inch our way through the big book. And you have to agree to sponsor people. And so he just was like, I'll sponsor you, but like, I just want to make sure, like, you know, these are like, this is the commitment to be part of our family that you make. And like, you don't have to do it. You don't have to join us, but like, you know, we do this thing every day, whether we want to, don't want to, like, no excuses. Like, we make it like a pact to do it. And, man, it was perfect for me. Like, you know, I believe like God brought me into that situation, and like, all the people I asked to sponsor me that didn't sponsor me, like it should have been a breeze, like after a few people to get a sponsor. And like I ended up like with these guys. And you know, I've been with them now for like 10, I guess like 10, like 9.5 months. And man, I love it. It's like a brotherhood, man. These guys are, you know, they bring prison meetings into prisons. You know, I go to a detox every Wednesday. I go to a rehab center every Friday night. Uh, and you know, I sponsor people. The sponsoring thing is tricky, man. People come and go. That's just like the nature of the game.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard. You know, and I did that many years myself, you know, tell someone like, yeah, I'm with it. I'm with it. You know, and then it became an inconvenience, or, you know, I just like, you know, like just didn't hold my word. And but it's such a blessing, man. You know, like I started my own company in Georgia doing like the sales thing. You know, I have an office. I work with this guy who's sitting over here, just like an amazing person. You know, I do my meetings constantly. I have a house, you know, for the first time in my daughter's life, you know, since like last March. And it's pretty sad, but like for the first time in my daughter's life, she has like a constant bedroom with me. And like, my office is like a half a mile from her school right here. Like I see her all the time. I have her every other weekend. Like I'm like a full-time dad again. And
That's great.
yeah, it's like amazing. And like I have a solution now. I have a solution with with AA. And uh I got I consider myself like an alcoholic because of like the big book. And like even in the big book it talks about like sedatives and morphine. And like Bill had a problem with that stuff too. I just kind of think of it like universally. And like you were asking me, like, man, some people, their version of sobriety is like that California sober, like smoking weed. And
Okay, yeah. I never heard it
yes.
called that, but California sober. I mean,
Yeah.
I believe in the big book because the way I say it is a lot of things in there I don't agree with, I guess, but it was the first recovery group ever,
Right.
AA. So you can learn so much from them, no matter what. Like I was gonna say, it's pretty interesting that you are a heroin addict going to AA. Usually that's not the case, but if it helps, it helps. All you have to do is change the word alcoholic to drug user
Right.
or addict.
100%. Yeah. And I've been my major like reasoning behind this too is like you said, it was like the first program. It's like the mothership program.
Yeah.
um but like sometimes when I'm in meetings and it's an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, but it gets like really drug talk, and that doesn't happen often, but sometimes I'm in meetings and like people just start talking like war stories and their shares and everything. And like I notice how like excited I get. And I'm like, oh yeah, like I was doing that, like I start getting really into it. And then something in my mind just tells me like what you were saying with the people, places, and things. Like I don't really, man, in like the last 15 years, I've probably been drunk like 10 times or something. Like it really wasn't something I did. Um, but like you said, like switching the word out, like I I did something to make myself more comfortable and take myself out of my reality, not to face my reality. And I've been around people drinking that were way worse than when they were on drugs around me. I've been around people drinking where it's like, you're like babysitting them. But I'm not comparing because I've been around people with myself on heroin that are dying next to me. Like it's not, one's not better than the other. But I really feel like in AA, it's enough to keep me my in sober, but like part of me kind of likes it that it's not like drug talk all the time. And it kind of keeps me, I don't know if that makes sense at all, but like it's just,
That does.
yeah, yeah,
Keeps you
it
on your
kind of,
toes.
yeah, it keeps me on my toes. And like uh whenever I get around addicts, like addicts have like an unspoken like bond and energy
Yep.
around them and stuff
Hmm.
like that. And
Yep.
I have, like a friend down here, like a few people that I've reconnected with, like only going to meetings with them, but I have stopped hanging around them because I'm like, man, they don't even have a solid program. Like they're going to meetings, but they're not working steps and anything like this. And we party, not partied, man. We used drugs together so heavily for so many years. Like uh it's just not healthy, like the people you're
Mhm.
saying, people, places, and things. Just I don't like the people I hang out with now. My AA sponsor family, my sponsor, the gentleman I work with, he's like a Purple Heart Marine. Like I just hang out with people around me that are like growing in life. And like on moving forward, man, because I just, like, for me this is life or death. um you know I don't, there's, like, I heard you mention about believing things in the big book and not, like, there's things I agree with, there's things I don't agree with. But the one thing I do notice is like that I hear in meetings is people talk about the progression. Whether it is a disease or it's a mental illness, whatever it is, I hear people in meetings all the time talk about being sober for 7 years. It's always a very similar story, like stop going to meetings, cut back on meetings, got away from the program. But then when they do, I guess it's a relapse, whenever they do start drinking again or doing drugs, a lot of them talk about like how fast they go right back to like almost like the end, they go, they might go out and like drink for a week, but they talk about how within like a few weeks they're just drinking like round the clock and how fast it gets. And if that is true, like if my disease is still like growing inside of me constantly and progressing, and the big book talks about that. There's an example of a guy that like for his career stops drinking for like 25 years.
Yep. And then he ends up
Yeah.
dead within 4 after he
Yeah.
retires. I think that was it. I know the story. He ends up
Yeah.
dead within like 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And man, my life is so good these days. It's not like the most exciting life. And like I was in a relationship, for the first 2 years, and like we never really argued. It wasn't like a bad relationship. But I met her in treatment, and she relapsed like early on, and then got like a year, relapsed when I came to see my daughter for the first time. She relapsed again. Then she got back into meetings, like I stuck by her side. Like I love her, like I really care for her. But then like we moved to Florida again, and then like um she things were getting like kind of distant, but she drank. Like I came home one night and she was like drunk, and then like it was like a tough decision, but I just called it, and I was, like there's nothing for me to go back to. And like basically like the only people I really want to surround myself with, and I'm not like judging people or anything, but I just want to be around people that have something to like offer to my journey, or I can offer to their journey, but they're moving forward and like building a life.
That's very important. So nowadays, kind of getting towards the end here, nowadays, what do you do to stay sober? Is there anything you suggest to people? Any type of program you specifically work? I mean, I know you went over a lot of what you do, but if there's anything else you think would be good advice to people.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, one of the biggest things that I think, besides the program, within the program is service work. Um,
Yep.
for me, I go to a detox on a Wednesday night, and I see people on day one of where I was many times. And every time I leave there with my sponsor, we just like look at each other and we're like, thank God we're not on day one in this place again, but we're doing some service and we're trying to steer them towards meetings. And then on Friday, I go to a treatment center where people have anywhere from like a week in there to a year, and I get to like bring a meeting. But beyond the program, exercise is like, I consistently, I'm not like pumping weights in the gym every day, and I'm an amputee. Like I lost my arm after that car accident. But I go to the gym as, I try to go every day, and like especially do it, or just riding the bike or doing the elliptical, um, doing like physical, like I think just getting like the blood pumping and everything, and like getting like, natural, natural chemicals moving. I just noticed like between going to meetings and like every time I leave a meeting, I feel better. And every time I leave the gym, like I feel like, I feel physically better, but it's also just like, and then especially the same with meetings, is like, there's many days I don't want to go, and, there's many days like, I've had a long work day, and my mind tells me like, man, I'm not going to relapse if I don't go to a meeting tonight. You know what I mean? Like, or I'll go to 2 meetings tomorrow, or like, I've made this like pact with my sponsor family, so it keeps me on point to going. But like, especially with the gym too, man, there's days I don't want to go. And whenever I go do something that I don't want to do, I feel that much better. And for someone like me, it's great to just like be building like some kind of like self-discipline and control to like do things, as a heroin addict, like and an addict, I only did things when I wanted to do them or when it benefited me or if I felt well to do it, like I had no problem constantly breaking my word or bailing on people or isolating. And it's just really helpful to me to just keep that consistency of like the gym and meetings. And I think those are like the two major things.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
you back in a relationship or anything right now? What's going on with your life?
No, like it's she's been gone for like a few months now, and um I definitely like want to get back into like a relationship, and like it's kind of something that's like on my mind. Um but like what my sponsor tells me and like my grand sponsor and stuff is don't force it right now. Like, I'm, as I said, I have a company that I'm building here. Between that and like sobriety and like being a dad, like I have so much positive stuff going on that I'm constantly like working at. Uh, and it's kind of confusing to me. Like I don't uh and maybe you have some input on this. Like I don't know if I'm supposed to like, especially after what I just went through, like, do I want to meet somebody who has like no issues at all with alcoholism or addiction, uh, but then doesn't understand like this my world or what I'm doing, or do I want to meet
Yep.
somebody but who understands this world but is like working like a solid program or like like has a good foundation?
Well, that's a tricky one. That's
Yeah,
absolutely a tricky one.
right.
But I think, well, I'm hoping when we find the right person, we'll find the right person. We'll say something will click, like, okay, because you never know. You might just get that person who's also interested in addiction and they like reading about it. You know what I mean? There are people like, that went to school for psychology and things like that. So never know who you're going to find. Never know.
Absolutely.
And you never know who it's going to work with until it actually works.
Yeah, there's no guarantees. You just gotta like, roll the dice with it. And but I'm grateful, man. Everything in my life is like that's like another thing in my sobriety is like I don't know if I don't take bipolar meds and everything. Um, but I do have a level of depression and PTSD, and like I do have mood swings and stuff like that. Um, and like I try to be like positive. I try to end every day with like positive thoughts and like start the morning with like positive thoughts and stuff. And like, like lately, like I have been lonely, but instead of like trying to like force it and be like running around and try to figure it out, like I try to take a step back and like look where I came from and like what I have today, and not just focus on like the one major thing missing from my life, but like, man, I have my daughter, I have my house, I just got a new dog, like I love the dog, I got so many things, man. I'm so blessed. I feel like I did like win the lottery, man, or something. Like it's, and I do say that sometimes, like when I am thinking negative or I'm depressed or sad, and I just said it this morning to the guy I work with, like sometimes I got to take a step back and like look how far, in the last, I think it's like 27 months or something, like how far in the last 27 months I've built my life is like, to me, like I'm really proud of it. And it's like a miracle, that I made it out. And, something else I just want to touch on too, real quick, with like the fentanyl, especially, and like what you were talking about with like that penny thing. Everybody who I was like, almost everybody I was using fentanyl with on that last run is dead. And,
Oh,
like multiple people that I'm sure, like they were like addiction survival friends. You know what I mean? They're nothing like my high school friends, and they're not like life. We really just like survived together.
yeah.
But I'm a pretty like upfront person. Like I can't deny we went through like a lot together. We went through like war together. And so like you built like, we were there for each other and like, and not there for each other a lot of times, but like super sad when like uh, you see on Facebook or you hear through the grapevine, like, oh yeah, they overdosed. And like, my friend's brother, like like a brother to me, like his younger brother and like another friend, like these people that, and like in Atlanta, I had a guy who lost his sister and he came and worked with me in Atlanta and he had like 70 something days. He was doing so good in the program and like he was doing so great. Relapsed, didn't show up to work the next day. And then like his mom called me like 2 days later, saying he was like killed in an automobile accident. And like, just like these things that like, I just feel so grateful every day. Like, I'm no better than any of those people. And in a lot of ways, I lived a way crazier life, man. And like, it's just, I really take that serious. Like in my sobriety, especially when I don't want to go to meetings and like I have a negative attitude and I start making excuses, I just think to myself, like, maybe there's someone at that meeting tonight who's like early to sobriety and like maybe I'll say something that'll like be enough to keep them coming back tomorrow or like maybe. And I don't know if that's true at all, but like it's enough to like keep my attitude positive with it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to wrap up. I really, really appreciate you being on the podcast and the YouTube video. So for the folks listening and watching, if you like what you heard for YouTube, go down below and hit the subscribe button. We're going to be trying to do at least one video a week. If you like our podcast, you can check it out on Spotify. It's on Anchor. It's on iTunes. Go to iTunes and give us a rating. We also have a Facebook group, so you can join that. It's just Addicts Anonymous. We got a lot of stuff going on there. We do also daily Zoom meetings. Sometimes we have them twice a day, afternoon and night. So I just wanted to let everyone know that. And until next time, folks, I'll talk to you then.